about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second in our series of live GCSE Business revision sessions for this term. And today we've got a marketing focus. And I'm joined today by Susan and Pete. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Susan. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I know you've had a busy day teaching, but we are going to dive into 30 minutes or so of some activities, including some calculations I hear. On marketing. So if you're joining us live, welcome. Have a go at these questions by typing your answers into the live chat window. Let's see how we get on. By the way, of course, always feel free to ask any questions as we go. If there's something we cover you're not quite sure about, that's the purpose of these sessions. And if you're joining us on replay, I think last week we had about 600 students who've watched us on replay after the live event. Well, we don't see your live answers, but hopefully you get a chance to give yourself a bit of time and have a go at all the questions, including some exam skill stuff. So we'll be looking to try to go beyond knowledge and build our essential exam skills as we do this session. Right, I think we're almost ready to start. Who's kicking off the session tonight?
I am today, Jim.
Susan. Right, what are we starting with? Let's have a look, shall we?
Yep. So as usual, our first activity is the big reveal, and I'm going to read out to you 5 different clues that relate to a well-known business. And all I want you to do is see if you can work out which business I am referring to before all the clues are revealed. So let's take a look at the first clue. So it was co-founded in 1974 by 2 friends who had dropped out of college. So it's just under 50 years old. If you've got any ideas at all, type them into the chat window. And it is an apple. And it's definitely not Apple. So let's have a look at number 2. Over the years, its logo has changed 5 times, with the current logo being 4 coloured boxes, so red, green, blue and yellow, that form a square. So we've got some answers coming through. Is it Google? Perhaps. Let's take a look at the third clue. Now, this is a big clue. It's a major multinational technology corporation. So we've got some more answers coming through. So focus on that word technology. It should be quite accessible, this particular business, once we get down to the last 2 clues. It launched the Windows operating system in 1985. And finally, it created and owns Xbox. So any final ideas in terms of what that business could be? So we have got a right answer in the chat window. A couple of answers are correct. So let's take a look. It's Microsoft. So well done. So Kemi A was the first one with that answer. So well done. So our first activity that links to marketing today is our connection wall. And I'm going to show you 12 phrases that will be randomly displayed on a table. And what I'd like you to do is to see if you can categorize the phrases into 3 groups of 4 and type those groups into the chat window, please. So let's take a look at these 12 different key terms or phrases. And I'll read them out so it gives you time to think what the groups could be. So product, interviews, decline, price, introduction, questionnaire, promotion, place, survey, focus group, maturity, and growth. So we're looking for 3 groups of 4 terms, and the groups all link to marketing concepts. So think about how you can make the connections between the terms. Can you see 3 different groups? So you can type either the groups or you can type in the words or the key terms that link to each of those groups. Or you can type in the coordinates as Jim has put in the chat window. So if you think A1, B1 go together, then type those coordinates in. So we've got some answers coming through, which is excellent. So once you've identified 4 of those terms and you think they're in one group, then eliminate those and then think about how those other terms could be linked together. So lots of answers coming through. So let's take a look at our first group. So we have stages in the product life cycle. So well done again. So Kemi has got that. So we've got introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. So the product life cycle, remember, shows how the sales of products change over time. Our next group is primary market research methods. So classic examples here of interviews, questionnaire, focus group, and survey. And remember, primary market research is research carried out firsthand for a specific purpose. And the last 4 obviously go together, and they're clearly the 4 elements of the marketing mix. So thank you for your contribution. So well done if you've got those categories right. And I'm going to hand over to Pete now to take you through the next activity.
Hello all, we've got 4 multiple choice questions coming up here. So what we'd like you to do, read the question through and then if you can pop your answer into the chat window. So which of the following is not a type of market segmentation? Not a type of market segmentation. Income, observation, location, or age. Which one do we think? Some key theory being tested here. And we're looking for which is not a type. Some answers coming through very quickly. It's great to see. And I think we're all pretty unanimous on this one. Let's take a look at the answer, please, Jim. Of course, it's B, observation. That is not a type of market segmentation. You can segment a market by income, location, and age, whereas observation, that's our method of market research. Next question, please. A business has conducted a focus group with a small group of respondents to find out their views on a new product. Which type of market research has been carried out here? Is it A, qualitative and primary, B, qualitative and secondary, C, quantitative and primary, or D, quantitative and secondary? So we're testing your knowledge of the different types of market research here, the data generated and the method in particular. So answers in the chat window. Let's see what we think. So a couple of answers starting to come through. Thank you, Kemi. A few more seconds just to see if we have any more people agree or put anything different. Such a core marketing topic at GCSE here, and sometimes candidates actually forget about one of the elements in these questions, and they don't mention it as part of their chains of analysis. So I think we've got a pretty unanimous decision yet again. Let's take a look at the answer, Jim. Of course, it is A, qualitative market research. So the purpose of focus groups is to generate opinions and views, and qualitative data is generated as a result of that. And as it was a focus group, it's first-hand new information, new data is going to be collected as a result of this. So it's primary research. Well done, folks. Let's take a look at question number 3. Which of the following does place in the marketing mix relate to? Now, this is sometimes confused by certain students. Is it A, location of industry, B, distribution channels, C, sales promotion, or does place refer to D, a business's product portfolio? A, B, C, or D, folks? And sometimes I've read answers in the past where students get a little bit muddled here when developing their chains of reasoning, and they go down an incorrect path because they've misunderstood what place refers to. A couple more seconds to see if we have any more contributions. Thank you to those who've contributed so far. Right, let's take a look at the answer here, please, Jim. Here we're looking for B, distribution channels. Now, the most commonly misinterpreted meaning of place is business location. So when people see place with regard to the market mix, they think immediately, it's where a product is bought, or the location of industry, as we put in A there. What we're actually referring to in place is the distribution channels. How does a business get its product or service to the end consumer? Is it direct from the business to the retailer? Okay. Or does it go through an intermediary such as a wholesaler? Okay. So depending on your exam board, you might have been taught different methods of distribution. This is always a good one to go back to when you're revising and think, what are the different advantages and disadvantages of using particular distribution channels? And as with most things in business, it often depends on the context and the nature of the industry in question. Last MCQ coming up here. Which of the following is a method of advertising? A, discounted products, B, free samples, C, billboards, or D, product trials? A, B, C, or D again. Which of the following is a method of advertising? Answers in the chat window, please. Think about the purpose of advertising. Kemi's coming with C. Thank you very much. We'll just see if there's any more answers coming through. Again, this is one of those questions where it can be misinterpreted at times. But we really need to think what advertising is and where it falls in the marketing mix. So let's take a look at the answer, please, Jim. Billboards is what we're looking for here. So billboards is the method of advertising. A, B, and D are methods of encouraging possibly a first-time purchase, okay, or a repeat purchase. So I would classify those as methods of promotion, okay, whereas advertising via a billboard, that's trying to get the consumer's attention and persuade them to make that initial purchase, make them aware of the product or service. So advertising is all about generating awareness about the business itself or a particular product that is launched for the first time, or it might be a case of reminding a consumer about a particular product. We'll just take a look at some exam goal before I hand over back to Susan. When faced with a multiple choice question in an exam, make sure that you do the following. Firstly, read it carefully. Some exam boards require 2 answers to be selected. You won't lose marks if both aren't selected. You will not lose both marks if one answer is correct and the other is not. You need to follow the instructions included in the exam paper carefully. You may be required to shade a circle or place a line in the box next to your preferred choice. And it's really important that you do that because the multiple choice questions are marked by a computer. So if you change your mind, follow the instructions that are given on the front of your paper meticulously. And as I've just said, because MCQs are computer marked, failing to follow the instructions may result in a mark not being awarded. And the very last thing I'm going to say here is always guess, right? You're not going to be penalised if you get an answer wrong. So never leave an answer blank and put something. Okay, I'll hand you back over to Susan.
Thank you, Pete. So we're going to spend the next few minutes looking at quantitative skills. So we're going to recap what they mean because they are covered in every GCSE business course. These represent a number of math skills or quantitative skills that regardless of which exam board you study, they will be the same. So in our live stream sessions, we tend to have 1 or 2 quantitative skills questions that we ask dependent on what the topic it is that we're covering. But today we're going to look at the quantitative skills in a little bit more detail because some relate specifically to marketing. So in terms of the quantitative skills, they will be assessed in both papers and will total 10% of the marks available. So in a 90-mark paper, this will represent 9 marks. Now, depending on your exam board, grade boundaries can fall between 9 and 13 marks apart. So if you can nail these questions, it might result in you increasing your mark by a whole grade. So it's really important that you understand the type of quantitative skills that can be assessed in each paper. Quantitative skills can link to any area of the business course and to any business context. And it's really worth remembering that because lots of students think that it just links to finance. The minimum level of maths in the question papers will be equivalent to Key Stage 3 maths. And many of the quantitative skills, and you'll see this on the next slide, are listed in the specification and are taught as part of the core content, but some are not. So let's have a look at these quantitative skills. So the quantitative skills are split into 2 sections. The first section is linked to calculations, and the text that is bolded and in black represents core course content that you'll be taught by your teachers as part of the course specification. The text in red will not be featured in your specification, but just in the quantitative skills. But you need to know that it's there because you may be asked a question which requires you to calculate a percentage or percentage change or an average. So in the second part of the quantitative skills, so you may be asked to use quantitative data in different business contexts to support, inform, and justify business decisions. So this can be information from graphs and charts. The second and third bullet points here link into the first set. So you've got gross profit margin, net profit margin, profit and loss, etc. But the last 2 bullet points specifically relate to marketing. So marketing data, including market research data, and market data, including market share, changes in costs and changes in prices that you may not necessarily look at as part of your core course content. So for example, Edexcel specification doesn't specifically link to market share, but AQA does. So we're going to look at 4 different 30-second challenges that are going to be focusing on the quantitative skills that are highlighted here in red. So let's take a look at the first one. So I'm going to read it to you so it gives you a little bit more time for you to process the information and complete the calculation. So using the data provided, calculate the percentage increase in the selling price of product B between last year and this year. So you've got a table of data here. You need to select the correct information, look at the headings of the table carefully, and then have a go at completing the calculation. So you have 30 seconds, type your answer into the chat window. So good luck. So 30 seconds isn't very long, so I'll give you a few more seconds to have a go at this calculation. Percentage changes are tricky, so even my A-level students sometimes forget the formula. So we've got some answers coming in. So Foxfly has got 20%. We've got another answer of 30%. So a little bit difference in opinion. So let's take a look at the actual answer. And the answer is 20%. So well done, Foxfly, for getting the first person to have the correct answer. So what you need to do is remember this formula. So the percentage increase is the change, or the new minus old, divided by the original figure or the old figure, and multiply that by 100. So if we look at product B, we must select the information carefully. So the new selling price for this year is £15. The selling price last year was £12.50, so the difference is £2.50. We then need to divide that into the original or last year's figure. So it's £2.50 divided by £12.50 times 100. Remember to do that. Will give you 20%. So we've got some other answers coming through from people. So well done, Theo, as well, for getting the correct answer. It's really important to remember that percentage change calculation because it's easily forgotten by lots of students, and this is a way that you can increase your marks if you can remember it in the exam. So let's take a look at the second one. So there's 5 businesses that operate in a local market. The total value of the market is £800,000. Calculate the value of sales that business B generates in this market. So you can see in the pie chart that there are 5 different businesses, as the question states. And for 4 of them, you can see their market share percentages. So what you need to do first of all is work out the market share for business B, bearing in mind the total market will be 100%, and then use that figure in order to calculate the sales for business B. So there's 2 stages here. So work through the calculation logically. Hopefully that's helped you, and we'll start the timer. So good luck again. Again, I'll give you a few more moments to finish off that calculation. So what we're looking for is not the market share, we're looking for the value of the sales. The first step is to work out the market share for business B. So got some answers coming through, so well done, because it's tricky to do it in that limited time. And well done, Kemi and Foxfly again. So the answer is 160,000. So remember your pound signs, remember to include the correct number of zeros. That's excellent, well done. And Theo again as well. So our total market share for businesses A, C, D and E, if we add those up, that equals 80%. Remember the market share as a whole for the whole market will equal 100%. So we subtract the 80% from the 100% to give a market share for business B of 20%. And then all we need to do is multiply the 800,000, which is the total value of the market, by 0.2, which is equivalent to 20%, and that will give us the total value of sales for business B as 160,000. So well done. So let's take a look at the next 30-second challenge. Now, this one and the next 30-second challenge looks at the same table of data. So a retailer conducted some market research to find out the views from 100 of its customers on the level of customer service in its store in the run-up to Christmas. The results are shown in the table. So there's two things in this question that you need to do, and it's slightly different because it's not a calculate question. They are identify questions, which quantitative skills questions can also be. So first of all, you need to identify the month which had the best level of customer service. And secondly, identify the second lowest customer service rating for the store for December. So have a look at that detail again, the questions, and then write or type your answer into the chat window. So let's start the timer, please. Fantastic. So we've got some answers coming in. So well done for processing that information so quickly. So let's take a look at the answers. And for A, so well done, Foxfly and Kemi and Deek, it was November. So the number of respondents who rated the business as good or fantastic was 57 in November, whereas in October it was 50 and in December it was 38. So clearly the answer for A was November. And for B, what I was looking for was poor. So the second lowest customer rating in December was actually poor. So well done to Theo as well for getting that correct response. Now you might think those two questions were quite simple. However, they're often simple or straightforward questions where students can make silly mistakes. So it's really important, read the question carefully and ensure you look at the table headings carefully as well so you can get the correct answers. So let's have a look at our final 30-second challenge. So same table of data, and the question this time is calculate the total number of respondents who chose the two most popular options in November as a percentage of the total number of respondents who took part in the survey. So remember, in the stem of the question, it says 100 people took part in the survey each month. So reread the question and type your answers into the chat window, please. So a few more seconds. So you are looking for the two most popular answers in November, and then completing a calculation to find the percentage of those out of the total who took the survey as a whole. And we have got a correct answer here. So let's take a look. So well done, Kemi. It is 80%. So the top two most popular options in November were average and good, which added together will give you 80 respondents. So 80 divided by 100 times 100 will give you 80%. So well done. So it's really important again to read the question and look at your table headings. So just some exam goal before I hand back to Pete. So the list of quantitative skills are included in your specification. So they might not be included by the core content, but a few pages later, but you've also got them on this PowerPoint to refer to when you are revising. Be prepared for questions that relate to interpreting market research data, market share, and changes in prices and costs. And that's what we've focused on in this session today. Examiner reports have identified that students find it much more challenging to successfully interpret or use data included in tables in comparison to graphs. Be prepared for identify questions linked to quantitative skills as well as calculate questions. So if you are an Edexcel student, in each paper you will see 4 calculate questions and 1 identify question. And as I said, they're important to gain these marks because it can help you to move up a whole grade. Keep practicing those percentages, percentage changes and averages, and reading data from tables and graphs, or questions of this kind can link to any part of the specification. So thank you for all your answers there. There's some tricky questions, so I'm going to hand back to Pete for the next activity.
Thank you, Susan. We're going to take a look at some context here, and our case study is console competition. So it's come to light in January this year that Microsoft has not been producing the Xbox One console for over a year. Instead, the business has focused its production on the Xbox Series S and X, its 2 newest consoles. The Xbox One was launched in 2013. It's estimated that up until now, 51 million units of the product have been sold. However, due to microchip shortages in 2020 and 2021, many people were not able to buy the Xbox Series X, which resulted in them buying the Xbox One. During this time, the Xbox One had also become increasingly difficult to buy as Microsoft had allowed the console to move into the decline stage of its product life cycle. In contrast, the lower-powered S version was easier to purchase. In response to these findings, Sony has announced that they'll be making another million PS4 consoles as there's been a shortage of PS5s. These PS4s will be produced as a slimline version of the original product. This is to meet the higher global demand for all consoles over the lockdown periods and to overcome the shortage in supply. The CEO of Microsoft Gaming has reported that the Series X and S are the fastest selling consoles in Xbox history. Japan has always been a tricky market for Microsoft to capture, as it's a country where Sony is of course based. However, the Series X and S have already sold more units in Japan than the Xbox One ever did. So we've got lots of context there about the console market, lots of business studies theory that we can pick out of it, and that's where we're going to go soon. But to start off with, we're going to take a look at a quick fire question, which you'll see on screen in a moment. Okay, so using the case study, can you state one example of an extension strategy? Answers in the chat window, please. Skim back through the paragraphs and see if you can find any examples. So we're testing the theory of product life cycle here. What can you see in the case that links to an extension strategy, or that is an extension strategy, sorry? Couple more seconds just to give people a chance to digest and see what they can spot. Some answers are starting to come through. We've got 2 answers so far. Thank you very much, folks. We'll just see if anyone can spot anything else. I know there's a lot to read there. Okay, let's take a look at the answer, please, Jim. So what we were looking for here was the slimline version of the PS4, okay? And Kemi said that Sony produced more PS4s as an extension strategy, and Minecraft's been a little bit more specific there and refer to the product redesign for the PS4. So it's the slimline version that is the extension strategy. You would think as well, wouldn't you, that actually producing the PS4s too, that's extending the life of that product by increasing production, and then of course by making it slimmer, that's extending the product's life because we're changing an element of the product very slightly. Okay, and this is typical in the console market. I remember many moons ago when they launched a slimline version of the PlayStation 2. That's probably saying something about my age. So we're going to stick with this case study and we're going to move on to an activity called On Balance. So this time, thinking about Xbox rather than Sony. What we'd like you to do here is give one reason why letting the Xbox One move into the decline stage of the product life cycle is a good idea. So why is it a good idea that Microsoft let the Xbox One move into the decline stage? Let's see what we think, folks. Answers in the chat window. It doesn't have to be full sentences. It can just be brief statements, couple word answers. Let's see what our thoughts and opinions are. Thank you, Kemi. So they can focus on promotion more on their newer consoles. Let's see if anyone else has got any ideas. Couple more seconds. Let's take a look at the answer that we've put, Jim. So we put that the Xbox Series S and X have proved more popular than the Xbox One in Japan. And that, I think, really ties in nicely that first comment that Kemi's given us there in the chat window, so they can focus promotion more on their newer consoles. And therefore, if they're focusing promotion there, there's obviously going to be a monetary cost involved, isn't there? Okay, so by letting the Xbox move into the decline stage, that is a good idea, so they can focus their resources elsewhere. Foxfly said they didn't have the components to produce more Xbox One. Yeah, possibly. We're not exactly sure if that's mentioned in the case. However, it would be a valid reason, particularly as we know the global economy suffered and as we saw in the case study, there's been lots of component shortages. So thank you very much for that one. And Minecraft's coming with a target market for the new Xbox, newer version. Yes, of course, that if they've upgraded the product, maybe they want to shift customers towards buying that upgraded experience, because not that I'm an expert in consoles, but I guess the Xbox Series X probably costs a little bit more than the Xbox One. Okay, thank you for those contributions, folks. What we'd like you to do now, okay, is to balance this argument out. Okay, give one reason why letting the Xbox One move into the decline stage is not a good idea. So let's see some pushback. Let's see some counter arguments. Let's see a disadvantage now. Think about something that was said in the case study, particularly with regards to lockdowns. See if you can recall. Minecraft said there may be shortages like this one during the lockdown where newer console stocks are sold out. Thank you, Minecraft. And Kemi's coming with they might not profit as much from people being indoors wanting to buy consoles. Excellent points, folks. Let's take a look at what we said. Let's balance this out. So you're both along the right lines in terms of the answer that we originally picked out. Because of lockdowns and because of component shortages, there was a global shortage of consoles, and therefore demand wasn't being met. So possibly there was an opportunity that was missed here by letting the Xbox One move into that decline stage, and hence it not being a good idea. I've got one more contribution in the chat window here from more being that they lose out on any profits from consumers purchasing a cheaper product. Indeed, okay, there might be some more price-conscious consumers that might actually prefer to purchase that rather than take a risk and splashing out on a more expensive console. Thank you very much for those contributions, folks. Some really well thought out ideas. I'll pass you back over to Susan.
Thank you. So our last activity is a chains of analysis activity. And I'm going to show you 6 sentences or part sentences that are muddled up on the next screen. And what I'd like you to do is to put them into the correct order. So the answer or the paragraph that will be formed will represent a logical chain of argument that is written in context that follows on from an initial point and is answering this question. So Pete was talking about balance in terms of a response. So if we think about a 9-mark question in an exam with the command word advise, recommend if you're an AQA student, or justify if you're an edXtel student, justify to Microsoft why it may not be a good idea for the Xbox One to move into the decline stage of the product life cycle. So we're looking at one side of the argument. So if you were answering a 9-mark question in the exam, you would have to have balance in your response. You would have to have a for argument as to why it may not be a good idea, and then have a counter argument as to why it may be a good idea for it to move into the decline stage of the product life cycle, and then come to an overall conclusion. So we're focusing on just one of the analytical paragraphs. So let's take a look at our sentences. So as you can see, there's 6 sentences. All I'd like you to do is to type the order in terms of the numbers into the chat window. I'm going to give you a clue and give you the first point, and that is number 3. So one reason is that there is a global shortage of consoles. So you need to read the point again, and then look at the different sentences or part sentences and decide what order they would flow in. So if you're at home, you might want to pause the video now so you've got a little bit more time to do this, but I'll give you a few moments to read each of the statements and then decide on the order. Remember, the objective is to create one paragraph that shows a logical chain of analysis using connectives. So in the chat window, number 3 would come first. So there are some clues when you read the sentences, because some of the sentences or part sentences don't have any grammar at the end, or they don't have a capital letter at the start, so you can see how one might lead easily into the next statement. Okay, so that might give you a little bit of a clue. So we've already got a response. So thank you, Minecraft. And another one, Mara. Well done. That's really good going because there's a lot of text there to read. So I'll give you a few more seconds. So let's take a look at our response and see if it matches up with your ideas. And the order is 3, 4, 1, 5, 6, 2. So well done, Minecraft. So let's take a look. The green text highlights the connectives used in our paragraph. This represents a chain of argument that is being developed. We want to avoid words like moreover or also or in addition, because that shows that we're moving on to a new point. What we're trying to do is to develop one point from the outset in a logical chain of reasoning. The red text represents context. And as I mentioned, this would form part of a 9-mark response. And the key is to make sure that you can textualize your answer in every paragraph. That means refer specifically to the case study in your for argument, your counter argument, and the conclusion, and that will allow you to gain marks full marks for this skill of application. So one reason is that there is a global shortage of consoles. As a result, customers are finding it difficult to buy the Xbox Series X and are therefore choosing to buy the older Xbox One as an alternative. So lovely context. The point is written in context from the start, which allows this answer to be rooted firmly in the case study. If the Xbox One is no longer produced and is in the decline stage of the product lifecycle, Microsoft will therefore not be able to meet customer demand successfully with just the Xbox Series X or S. This means the business will lose out on sales to rivals such as Sony. So lots of students would just say this means they would lose out on sales. Because we know who the competitor is from the case study, include it to get more context into your answer, as they will be able to buy the PS4 much easier than an Xbox because Sony has announced they will be making 1 million more PS4s this year. So a detailed chain of argument. If you were writing a 9-mark response, you wouldn't have to include all those strands or all those steps in the chain of argument. For an Edexcel student, you just need 5 strands across 2 points. So you can cut back there, but you can see here how a fully detailed logical chain of argument can be formed by referring to the case study. So perhaps when you're doing your revision, you could have a go at producing a counter argument to this as to why it may be a good idea for the Xbox One to move into the decline stage, because then you can get more practice in terms of writing chains of argument in context following a logical point. So let's take a look at some exam gold to finish. Thank you for your contributions there. That's really good going. In the extended response questions, i.e. a 9-mark question, or a 12-mark question that follow on from a case study, you will need to produce a balanced argument. That is absolutely key in order to gain evaluation marks. A balanced argument means you look at a for and a counter argument. Now, if it's a 9-mark question in Edexcel, you pick one of the bullet points and you do a for and a counter argument on one bullet point only. Dependent on your exam board, as I've said, 1 pro and 1 con is usually sufficient for the analytical paragraphs, definitely for AQA and definitely for Edexcel. Avoid listing lots of knowledge points in your answers in this type of question. In fact, in a 9-mark question, there are no marks for knowledge on their own. You've got to show skills of application, analysis and evaluation in order to move up the mark scheme. The key to success is to be selective. Try and take points directly from the case study, as this will allow you to start gaining marks for context from the outset of your answer. That's really key. Topic areas like market research, for example, where students tend to know lots of pros and cons, often end up in these 9-mark answers as a list. And that, unfortunately, will prevent you from, as I said, moving up the mark scheme. The key is to be selective, show skills of analysis, show application skills, and then come to a fully justified conclusion. So thank you very much. That's the last little bit from me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Pete. Gold dust, exam gold. So well worth, if you get a bit of time, going back over this session. And of course, all the other previous sessions that Pete and Susan and Graham and the team and Mike have put together. If you go to tutor2.net/live, go to the archive section and select Business GCSE from the drop-down menus. I think we've done about 30, haven't we now? 30 sessions that cover just about every topic on GCSE Business, including lots more of the calculations as well. We did there's some hard questions in there today, particularly those calculations. Those weren't easy at all.
No, but they had a good go. So thank you for all the contributions. So Kemi and Foxfly, they were really, really good in terms of putting notes in the chat window, and Minecraft as well at the end. So thank you very much. Great to see. Many thanks for joining us. Oh, sorry, Pete, we were going to say.
Oh, Jim, I was just saying I'll second that as well. Thank you very much.
No, it really makes a difference when everyone's working so hard in the live chat. We know that lots more people watch these sessions on replay, which is cool as well. But many thanks for taking some time out to join Susan and Pete and myself live this afternoon. We are back again at this time next week. I'm not sure, have we got the topic for next week? I think we have. It's it's human resources next week. Human resources. Well, I'm going to be there. And that should be another cracking session. So many thanks for that. Well done. If you're doing geography, hang around. 6:30, we're back for our second GCSE geography. So bring your colouring in pencils and get ready to study at 6:30. But for now, from Susan and Pete and myself, thanks for joining us and see you later.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.